The Dragon Story, Chapter 7, Healing and Farewell. Chloe stepped up in front of everyone and told everyone to step back. She had run to her car and grabbed the first aid kit she always kept in the trunk. She was a nurse and knew what to do. With steady hands that had treated countless wounds before, though never on a dragon, she pulled out sheets of white gauze and pressed them firmly against the gash in the father dragon's side. The massive creature flinched but stayed still, seeming to understand that she was trying to help. "I need to hold pressure for 5 minutes," she said quietly, her hands already staining red from the blood. "It's deep, but if we can stop the bleeding," she said. The mother dragon moved closer, her enormous head coming to rest beside her mates. Their golden eyes met in a look of such deep understanding that it made everyone's heart ache. Smokey pressed against both his parents, making soft whimpering sounds showing his concern that echoed across the snow-covered ground. The 7 other dragons formed a tight circle around them, their wings creating a protective barrier against the winter wind. Bub watched in awe, suddenly understanding what he was seeing. This wasn't just any dragon family. The way the others deferred to Smokey's father, how they'd come to his aid. This must be their king, which made Smokey's mother their queen, and Smokey himself the dragon prince. The father dragon's eyes, though clouded with pain, fixed on Chloe as she worked. There was intelligence there, and gratitude, and something else, something ancient and wise that made Chloe's hands tremble slightly as she carefully removed the blood-soaked gauze and began taping fresh bandages over the wound. With a grunt that sent small flames flickering from his nostrils, the mighty dragon raised his head. He wavered for a moment, then found his strength and stood, his wings spreading slightly for balance. Smokey looked up at his father with such relief and pride that it made Bub notice the strong bond they had. Suddenly all 7 of the other dragons lifted their heads skyward and let out a triumphant chorus of cries that echoed throughout the woods. The sound was like nothing any human had ever heard, part song, part roar, but mostly gratitude and celebration. G-Dad stepped forward and placed his hand gently on the father dragon's head. "Take care of yourself," he said softly. Bub went to Smokey and hugged him tight, feeling the warmth of his scales one last time. "It's time for us to go," G-Dad said. "They all need time to rest and heal, especially Smokey's father." "But what about the red dragon?" Bub asked, worried that it might come back. G-Dad smiled. "I think they'll be fine now. Look at them. They're stronger together," he said softly. As if to confirm this, the father dragon bowed his great head to Chloe, a gesture of thanks that she returned with a slight nod. The mother dragon did the same, and then both turned toward the cave entrance with Smokey following alongside them. Then the other dragons followed, like honor guards protecting their ruler. Just before entering the cave, Smokey turned back. He looked at each of them, William, Chloe, Sienna, and G-Dad, and then lifted his head to the sky, letting out one final screech that seemed to say both thank you and goodbye. Then disappeared into the darkness with his family. The drive home was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts about what they had just witnessed. Bub stared out of the window at the passing trees, remembering how different they had looked from high atop Smokey's mom's back. After an hour, he finally spoke. "Do you think we'll ever see them again?" he asked. "I don't know, sweetheart," Sienna said softly. "We should come back next week," Bub suggested, "to check and see if the dad is better." Chloe nodded. "Yes, we can do that." But when they returned the following weekend, with Mom, Wagner, and little Anakin in tow, eager to see the dragons themselves, something strange had happened. The cave was gone. They searched for hours, but where the entrance had been, there was only solid rock. "That's strange," said Sienna. "How could it have completely disappeared?" Granddad thought about it a bit, then said, "It must be a magical cave. That's how they've stayed hidden all this time. You can only find it if a dragon leads you there." They still looked for it, but to no avail. They couldn't find it, no matter how hard they looked. Weeks later, G-Dad just happened across a news story from a few days ago. He showed Bub. The news story said that several people on Mount Washington had heard strange yowl-like sounds and felt several powerful wind gusts on the mountain that day. "See?" he said with a knowing smile. "They're still up there. They're just magical creatures, only letting themselves be seen when they choose to be seen." Through the summer they made several more trips to the mountain. Though he never found the cave again or saw the dragons, sometimes they'd find signs: a charred rock, broken branches from high in the trees, or occasionally what looked like an enormous claw mark in a boulder. Each time Bub would smile, knowing his dragon friends must still be there. Safe. And sometimes, on very quiet nights, when the wind blew just right, he could have sworn he heard a familiar screech from the direction of Mount Washington, even so far away. The sound of a young dragon prince growing up under the watchful eyes of his parents in a magical cave that appeared only when needed, in a world where dragons still flew free.